We'll see.
Perfect.
I think we are live right now. So I see that Richard is already here making an appearance, the first viewer. I don't know who else is here, but if you're here, drop a hello. We are here talking about LTM 2.5. And if you don't know what LTM 2.5 is, that's totally okay. We will tell you. That's what the whole stream is about. And also Microsoft Build. Recently, Tsavo down there. And then Brian went to Microsoft Build last week, and it was really, really cool. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Ellie, developer advocate at Pieces, and I am here with a bunch of really cool people. They're over in this direction. And could you guys go around the room and introduce yourself, maybe like starting from Tsavo, and then we'll go that way, and then we'll go up.
Sure. Hey, some of y'all might know me, but I'm Tsavo, CEO and technical co-founder over here at Pieces. And I get the pleasure of not only building a great company, but working with amazing people every day, like Brian and Antreas. Yeah. Brian, if you want to, or Antreas. Yeah.
Cool. Go ahead, Brian.
Hey, I'm Brian. I am the head of MLOps at Pieces. I don't do so much model training, but a lot more model serving, figuring out how we can take these cool models that Antreas and team are gonna talk about here and put them on your device, running fast, low compute on the edge.
Okay.
Cool. And I'm Antoniou. I joined like 7 weeks ago or so, and I'm currently the principal AI scientist and head of research here at Pieces, machine learning research specifically. So we've been cooking up some pretty cool nano models that are able to run very quickly with low resources locally to make what can be a mess of a memory into a nice place that offers reliable and relevant context to your queries.
I love that. And also, speaking of making a mess of a memory into something that is actually understandable to humans and people just doing their things every day. Right before this live stream, I was like, okay, did Pieces get that we were doing this? Like, do they know that we are about to hop on this live stream and talk about a bunch of stuff? So I did pull this up. Hopefully you guys can see it. Hopefully it's big enough. But this is my workstream activity view, which is updated. Maybe somebody will talk about it in a little bit. But actually you can see that Pieces got that we're going to be talking about like all the new features and improvements to nano models and the MCP server enhancements, which I'm excited about. And then also, of course, it got the Microsoft Build stuff. So I thought that was pretty cool that Pieces knows exactly what we're doing right now. So I wanted to let you guys see that really quick. I see LinkedIn users here. I always love when a LinkedIn user pops up. I'm like, I have no idea who you are, but welcome LinkedIn user. And yes, welcome to the YouTubes, Richard. All right, we're going to get into it. A couple of you guys have already mentioned LTM, but I do think like maybe there are some people who actually don't know what LTM even is, right? There's definitely people that are thinking like, what is LTM? Just to give you the definition, it's long-term memory. That's what I'm going to say, but I want Tsavo to give the ultimate CEO definition of LTM. Can you share with that?
Totally. I think to get to LTM, you have to kind of work backwards, right? And we're building everything in Pieces like kind of, based on biology, right? How the human brain works. And so there's three major components, like RTC, which is real-time context. Can you ingest it? Can you insert it into the memory graph and so on and so forth, interconnect it? Then you have like short-term memory, which is like, effectively memory from today, memory from earlier, like, high concentration of detail. And then you get to LTM, which is long-term memory. And so before you can even get to long-term memory, utilizing the value prop of it and whatever else, all the context that crosses your desktop has to go from real-time context awareness into kind of short-term memory, high granularity events, and then gets rolled up and kind of packed in REM sleep into long-term memory, right? So LTM is actually very loaded, and it's kind of the macro component of all these other memory like elements or like memory nodes, if you will. But yeah, the short of it is, a developer's job is to half remember something and look up the rest, but that's not only a developer's job, that's really any digital worker's job. And more we feel that the context crossing the desktop, the context that the human is interacting with, is the most important context, and the context that will be the entry point into a broader context for that human to, figure something out, pick up where they left off, or share that context to someone else, which tees us up for some of the nano model stuff. And I'll just say abstractly, if you look at an intelligence system like an organic brain, it's got a whole bunch of lobes, right? And those lobes do all different types of things. And that's how we think about, contextual retrieval and contextual organization. But one of the biggest things is that humans remember things very, very interestingly, right? So you might remember, hey, I was having that conversation with Mark. I can't remember the one detail he was bringing up about the algorithm, but I know on the same day, later in the afternoon, I had a live stream about LTM 2.5. So like 2 weeks down the line, you might be like, before the live stream on 2.5, what was that discussion I was having with Mark about the patch release we're trying to put out, right? And so your entry point is not the end memory, but it's adjacent memories that are related to it, either by time, person, source, whatever else. And so when we think about nano models, we think about ways to break down those entry points, which I'll let Antreas and Brian speak more to. But a model that is good at time, right? A model that is good at sources, right? When I was researching, what does that map to, i.e. applications on my computer, or like coding, like what were the apps I was using when I was coding? So that's like a source entry. And then, of course, like there's a whole bunch of other things, but individuals. So Brian Lambert versus Brian Powell, right? So entity identification, me versus my team versus a colleague, right? So these are all different things, all different heuristics that we have to attach to these memories when we insert them, but also enrich on an input query or search query before we run RAG, right? So I'll pause there, see if there's any questions in the chat, but yes, Ganesh, hopefully it will. We'd love to see some of the types of questions you're asking.
Yeah, I definitely do think it will, because I have a theory. I was talking to Antreas about this the other day when we were doing an interview, I'm pretty sure, but I don't remember. Maybe Pieces will tell me if this is true or not later. But I do think that people's memories are getting worse just from consuming so much short form content. I think digital detoxes are needed for people, honestly, for their brains and their memory. So I think Pieces has like a huge place in the future, just because we are consuming so much information that we might only remember that one little piece, right? Like you mentioned, Tsavo. So you have this little tiny bit of context that you're like, I know I talked about that, but I don't know all the details. Oh my God, I'm like losing my voice. Yeah. But I'm a huge believer that Pieces LTM will help out with that. And also a question to the chat, do you think our memories are getting worse or not? And do you think Pieces is the future of memory? I like to think of it like a second brain for us. So we'll see if that is the case. And someone was asking earlier, let me see if I can find it. What's new in LTM? Greenwich was asking about that. That is where we want to go next. I do want to know what's new in LTM 2.5. That's the whole point of this chat here. So does anyone have any things that they're most excited about when it comes to what's new? I don't know who wants to start. Maybe Tsavo, you mentioned Antreas. Antreas, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah. So first, I want to just say that I've seen somebody in the chat said that I always say, how you imagine a personal assistant that follows you every day and knows everything. This is the kind of product I wanted to have in my life. And so when when I was interviewing for Pieces like 7 weeks ago, this is what they were trying to do. So like I just jumped. I was like, okay, let's do this. In terms of what's exciting, so in LTM2, many of the parts of the Pieces OS, which is the system that automatically extracts information from everything you're doing and then packs it into sensible memories, was using, to some extent, like to a fair extent, like cloud models to do its job.
Yep.
But with LTM 2.5, we basically have more models, but then smaller ones. So there's more, let's say, filters that allow the system to find the relevant context that you need. And we're doing it on local, small, or nano models, as we call them, which are, if I were to use a similar term as earlier, if you imagine that current LLM is more like a city of people doing things, nano models are like the exact person for a specific job.
Yep.
Which means that they take a lot less compute and they're more energy and memory efficient for what we want to do. So yeah, I would say I'm more like excited about those things. The fact that we have a number of filters, time filters, tagging relevant to what's happening on the screen, and source filters that allow us to very efficiently break down the space of things and actually give you that magic moment of I'm asking for what I want and I'm getting exactly what I want, which is, I think, awesome. Like I experienced that for myself for the first time like 10 days ago. And I was like, okay, this is going to be crazy. And it's been like that ever since. And it's only going to get better.
Yeah. And before I kind of share some stuff, I'll tee up Brian here. Brian and I, we were at Microsoft Build, not to get ahead of ourselves, but the world of agents, is clearly a huge press. And Brian, maybe you can elaborate a little bit, but we were sitting in the keynote and they're like, yeah, we just solved 7 issues in 7 minutes, right? And Ellie, to your point about the context switching and the volume of context and the velocity of context, Brian, I don't know if you want to speak towards that problem and how maybe it's less about memory getting worse, but more about the volume, right?
Yeah, right. So everyone knows that the AI is allowing us to become kind of more efficient as problem solvers, but also allows us to kind of duplicate ourselves in many directions at once. So I can kick off a deep research agent to go out and do something there. I can kick off Cursor to go work on this project. That's a ton of context for me to try to remember. So I've got like all these agents going on all at once, doing things that I don't know about behind the scenes. When I need to come back like an hour later and say like, all right, hey, like what's the status of my projects? What was I working on? Like, where do those agents leave off? Having pieces as a tool to organize all of this kind of agentic workflow that's going on in parallel is much needed. Like humans aren't built for this kind of like concurrent processing. Like we are built to focus on one task and digest that, not like 10 tasks in parallel all at once. And so having pieces is that kind of layer in the middle to keep you sane is what we need in this future. And it's only going to get worse as these kind of agentic protocols continue to develop. So yeah. That's what's most exciting for me.
Yeah, I would just add to that. That's why we have a deep belief that whatever context does end up crossing your desktop is the most important context, right? And to Brian's point about like the tasks, previously it was like I, as a digital worker, I'm working on one task for a prolonged period of time. But now AI reduces that time down, which now means you have time to work on 10 other tasks and you're jumping between them a whole lot more aggressively. And so that's the context switching problem, right? It's like, yesterday alone, it's like the number of tabs I have open per day, it used to be maybe 50 max. Now it's like 4 instances of Chrome with 100 in each, right? Per day, right? It's crazy. And yeah, we'll kind of pick back up on the nano model stuff, but I'll just share here. We'll talk about the ones that have come in, but let me just share my screen. So to Antreas's point, we are very interested in adding heuristics to the memories that are formed in real time, but also using those heuristics to make very efficient RAG and retrieval in a large search space, right? So of a million memories from the last 2 months, how do I find that element in the middle, or how do I effectively summarize the high level points? And so each of these entry points, one is interpreting time, the other is interpreting source, the other is interpreting people, the other is interpreting intent and topics. Like there's a whole bunch of them that work together. But I put this blog out highlighting, the time model, if you will, with super small on-device models. And the most important goal here is figuring out when a query is referring to like content retrieval. So what was I working on just now versus when it's just abstractly referring to temporal references. So what am I doing tomorrow? That's, information planning, whatever else. So that's a classification task. And then if we do determine that it is a content retrieval task, we need to actually get a bounds, a to and from bounds. And so here's a couple of examples, right, where the classifier says, I will go to the store tomorrow. Okay, great. There's no span predictor. But what was the website I was just looking at? It determines in 22 milliseconds that it is content retrieval. And then in 100 milliseconds, it generates a to from range that we can then, scope the database search to, if you will. And you can do this from many different angles, as I kind of, alluded to. And then, if you look at like how this performs against big models, which we were using, before, because often what we'll do is we'll ship new features, prototype them with big models, and then bring them local. And we did this for roughly 12 models over the last, couple months. But this intent model, much higher accuracy than some of the big models. But the other big thing is that the execution rate of it is significantly higher, right? So samples per second is order of magnitudes higher than these other big models. You also have no latency because it's local, or maybe a little bit for a cold start. And then the other component is it's significantly more cost effective and significantly more private, if you will. And then, same thing on the span prediction. So the kind of accuracy or expected outcome, significantly higher. And then same thing here, samples per second, significantly higher than the kind of big models that were out there, a month or two ago. So I'll pause there. Antreas, I don't know if you want to elaborate on some of this stuff, but
I guess the first thing I want to elaborate on is somebody mentioned it's interesting that you've chosen to use the nano branding that OpenAI used. I should say that our nano models are probably 1 or 2 orders of magnitude smaller than those. So when we say nano, we mean smaller than 100 million parameters. And I'm going to take a wild guess and say that even the smallest nano models that OpenAI has served are probably in the range of billions of parameters. That's the first thing. And I guess second on top of that is that one of the things that is very, I think, fundamental for anything similar to what PCS is doing to work in practice is that everything has to be done on device. Like, I wouldn't want a memory butler, which is what this is, going around collecting data, throwing them there like some other place, right? I would want the collection to be happening on my device, the memory information and the organization on device. And then once that's available, then I can use MCP calls for the very specific context that I need after it has been depersonalized, basically. Or in an ideal world, the copilot and the butler are both local, right? So this is like our longer term vision. And this is what nano models allow us to actually do. Because you're on a device and you have to do things efficiently. It has to not spike your GPU more than 10%, has to be low memory, and it has to do things that normally you use massive beefy GPUs to do that are running at 100% utilization, right? So it's a very different paradigm. So having small models that do a very specific job very well, and then orchestrating them in the right way, given a situation, is what will allow us to do that. And in fact, at this current moment, like 90% of our memory butler is fully local and on device, with a very small 10%, which is the very final part that after everything has been depersonalized, receives some kind of structure. And that will also go away within the next month and going to be 100% local. So that's one of the things I'm most excited about, because I want to use this and I don't want to use this and feel like home. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Brian, maybe you can speak towards serving some of these and the challenges of like different hardwares. I know we just had that collaboration with Microsoft, accelerating the stack on neural processing units and whatnot. But what are you seeing, as we explore the space of like more models running more efficiently, and some of the challenges that we're getting into, well ahead of the market?
Yeah, we've been in this kind of local model space for a while, so it's something that we've luckily been prepared for. We're using Onyx Runtime, Microsoft product, to serve all of these models. We chose that because it is very much hardware agnostic. So you can start at the lowest level, very easy to serve, hit the CPU on any machine, very simple. but very soon we're planning to scale in terms of hardware acceleration. So with Microsoft, as I'll get into, we were able to target the new NPU to speed up all sorts of models that we serve locally. But obviously, for every other device, that means we can use your Apple Neural Engine, your CUDA GPU, your AMD GPU, your Intel integrated GPU, you name it. All of this is very much made easy with Onyx Runtime, but it is much harder. This is like it. We're kind of developing a nice moat for ourselves in this area because the trend in AI, as we've said, is just like throw big models up in the cloud, run it with PyTorch with CUDA acceleration. That's like a solved problem. People know how to do that very well. To Antreas' point, running these on device to ensure privacy has this whole other kind of layer of complexity to it, where we have to think about things like hardware acceleration. And so we're tackling these hard problems first, but we've built these foundational blocks to be able to make that kind of easier for us as we really dive into it. And then in right now and probably in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah. And Henry, to your point here, we are super, super focused on a net new type of experience beyond conversational chats, which is basically like real-time suggestions, right? Which is one of the other reasons that these nano models are very important, is like given the context in front of you, given the context you just came from, given all the long-term memories you have, how can we, unprompted from the user, proactively say, hey, you're looking at this documentation, you looked at these documentations, had this Copilot chat, and worked on these files 3 weeks ago, right? And resurface that content automatically. So, if you think about it right now, just from memory formation, anywhere between 30,000, 50,000 memories per user per day that need to be inserted into the retrieval space. They need to be enriched and interconnected, and then they need to be retrieved against very quickly. If you do all of this on top of large language models, it would be virtually impossible to build a cost-effective product that also maintains like your privacy and just like respects the data that you're interacting with, right? So, for us, it's not only about the local models, but it's also, hey, we need these local models for net new experiences beyond conversational copilots, for real-time suggestive experiences, for low latency, cost-effective, private experiences. These are the building blocks. And the only other thing I was going to say is I do find it convenient that a couple of weeks after we had some good exchanges with the team at OpenAI, that they called their models nano models, which is like, I don't think that is per se an original idea. Let's say that. But not too many shots fired. I'll just drop that in there.
I love that.
Just to add one more point to that, related to the question here from Henry, is that?
Yeah, that's
right?
Henry.
Yeah, right. So I guess that's one of the things I think about a lot, to be honest with you. I think you are correct. Like if you were to just look at things currently, for the Copilot side of the fence, you kind of need the big beefy models. But what we're aiming to do with Pieces OS is have this memory butler that collects things as you go along, and then can serve the big boys whatever is needed, depersonalized, ready to go. Like, for example, I use Pieces with Cursor all the time. Like, basically, Cursor and Pieces are one in my mind. Sometimes when I speak to the team, I say Cursor OS, and I mean Pieces OS. But, I get confused in my head. But on top of that, I'd say that current LLMs, they were scaled too fast, in my opinion. And there's a lot more things you can do at the architecture and algorithm level for the learning that can make the thing a lot more compact and, let's just call it like intelligence per neuron situation. Yeah. So you can't quote me on this one, but I think in like 5 years time, you're going to be able to have a 1 billion or smaller parameter model that can do what 100 billion parameter can do right now. And as with big companies put more money into embodied AI, robotics, wearables, local models become more and more important. And I think there's going to be a day in the next like 7 or 8 years where you will be able to get the performance you get from GPT-4 or, Claude 4 on device. even though, we'll see what happens, but just putting it out there.
Brian, any comments there?
No, I mean, I think you nailed it. To come back to this question from Henry, to look at it from like a privacy perspective, obviously, if you're sending this data off to a big public LLM, like that's not data private, but a trend that we see from a lot of enterprises that approach us is that they have their own private instances of GPT, Claude, whatever, hosted through Azure, whatever service, or their own servers. We currently don't have this offering, but this is something that we've like repeatedly heard from as like a required feature. And so I think that trend will continue where like there's so many fields that can't send data to public LLMs. We're aware of this, and for sure it's on our radar to hook into those privately hosted models that will allow you to have like a confidently full closed private system while still having the benefit of the biggest model out there.
Yeah, AWS Bedrock, with Claude and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, we're exploring that. I will say it's a big win for us to drop into these enterprise environments like fintech or companies in Europe and whatever else, to where we don't have to say, hey, we're going to offload like all of the compute onto your servers, because they do look at that, right? So it's like cost of compute per user per day. And if that's beyond a certain point, because they're paying for that compute, then we eat the cost there, right? And so to build a SaaS model, $20 a month, $30 a month, whatever, for enterprise customers, if you don't get smart about processing this data, then your profitability becomes unsustainable, right? So there's no number right now of $200 plans or $10,000 plans or whatever else that will rapidly make OpenAI profitable, right? They're trying to figure all this stuff out as well, as are we, right? So pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting. And also, I think, Brian, you mentioned, enterprise and teams briefly, right? Just now. That's one thing I'm really excited for, is when we are, there is a way to have everything run locally, because like if you're working at this huge company, like the huge company is not going to want all of their secrets going out into some random cloud, right? So I am very excited for when we get that like locked down 100%, and then these big companies are like, hey, here's my memories from last week, so you can use them and catch up because you just came back from your honeymoon or whatever. So I'm very excited for that part. We do have a lot of questions that came in while you guys were chatting, so I'm gonna go through them really quick. Mm-hmm. The next one is from Greenwich. So Greenwich said, LTM 2.5 is faster and smarter in a way, but how fast is it to actually retrieve the memory data from the past? For example, if it was like 2 months ago, how long would you need to wait to get a response from that?
I can do a little bit of demos here to highlight some of this stuff if we
okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. Should I do it right now, or okay?
If you want to, if you have something up and you want to be like, what were you doing 2 months ago?
We're gonna do some.
While you're sharing that, let me just say that because of this kind of filtering that we have, these multiple nano models that can do filtering, like as soon as we have the time range, for example, you're already looking at a couple of magnitudes less entries. Yep. And, by the end of the whole thing, the vector search happens on a very few amounts of samples, which makes this super fast, because much of the search is done with, oh, here's the tags and here's the time. And we just literally use old-fashioned, computer science like filters, drop that, and then you get the relevant bits. Yeah.
Yep. So we'll do kind of like a before and after here, but we'll pick April 26th, and this is just going to be kind of to give folks some context of what we're going for. But we've got some curl downloader stuff, some internal installer stuff, whatever else. We've got some concurrency stuff. All of this is related to the curl downloader, and this is April 26th. So what I'll do is I'll actually go to the Copilot chat, and I'll highlight a couple things. So before, we had these buttons that you could scope your search space on, time ranges, sources, whatever else. But those are actually going to be going away here in the coming weeks, because our nano models are getting extremely good. But I'll ask it, tell me what I was working on towards the end of last month related to curl downloaders. Specifically, what was I researching, and perhaps who was I collaborating? I need a high level summary. So this is going to be 50-50 shot this works, but we're going to demonstrate a couple things here. So what we're doing right now is we're actually paying the cold start. We actually shut down the models after a certain period of inactivity. So we just basically paid the cold start, and it figured out that last month, end of last month was last Wednesday. That said, yeah, this is definitely wrong. That's how you know it's a real nano model, but let's see what we got. It also figured out these are the sources that I use when I'm researching. So it actually did a good job on the sources. Chrome, GChat, definitely some calls, iMessage, and notes, which is cool. Let's try this out. All right, let's try this out. And
it does say about April though, right? In the actual chat.
It actually does, which makes me think that this might be a UI bug, believe it or not. I'm not super sure, or it did a fallback here, but around April 22nd, you were researching MCP stuff, Flutter JSON viewer, some of the other stuff, definitely with these guys. Yep, a PR related to the Mac OS installer, which we are using the curl downloader on. And then let me just jump over to one of these memories here. So let's see if we've got one. We'll pop into this. That's May 8th. That is a related memory, which actually it pulled up. So we are related to the curl downloader, process OS install project. So this is actually a more near-term memory, but still highly related. Let me go back to the Copilot chat. So I'll just do Copilot or back, and I'll go back there. Let's try how about end of April related to this curl downloader. I'll try a follow-up here. Interesting. So it actually detected that based on my input query, these are some relevant workstream summaries. We'll get these like polished up, to make this a little bit more easy to read. Yeah, it does think, I wonder if this is a UI bug, because it is for sure getting it right in the response, April 26th through the 30th. So we got PR number 6. We've got some technical issues addressed. So per URL in-memory locking for that.
Yeah, it could be a UI bug, because we have someone, Sean, said that his prompts always get dated day before yesterday at the moment. So we gotta open up an issue here. I guess some people we're getting a lot of day before yesterday.
It's real, guys. Yeah, it's real. But yes, we'll look at that. I mean, like I said, it is in a matter of milliseconds. It's trying to figure these like timestamps out. So I'll show you kind of like how it's happening very fast. I'll say summarize what I was up to yesterday evening. And ironically, the model's probably doing, so there we go. It figured out yesterday evening. It gave me a time range. It gave me the sources. So a lot of stuff in email, again, messages, Chrome, some of the other stuff. We were talking about, a whole bunch of stuff. Day one retention significantly improving. Fun fact, we've seen a 10-point jump up from 60-ish% to like 70, low 70s, which is cool. But yeah, I mean, we got leadership and ML team stand up, summary that we're looking out for June. So what are we shipping in June, so on and so forth, some ad stuff, whatever else. But yeah, I mean, evaluating that time range, ironically, we're probably having a UI bug that messes that up. But
we did have one, right? We did have something related the other day.
Yeah.
Where the UI was doing something weird, but the actual response made sense with the time.
We'll have to take a look, but this stuff is hard. And at the end of the day, mapping that range to a readable set of text is a little tricky UI thing that I think we might be messed up on. Yeah.
Hey, at least we found a bug and we're gonna fix it now. So I think that's a win. Did you still want to share your screen, Tsavo?
I can also just highlight too, just some other things in LTM 2.5, but you'll see these temporal groupings now where you can kind of like pop into place. You can take a look at it. If you get lost in here, pro tip, there's a little target icon to take you to the one you're currently focused on. Some other stuff you'll start to see like related Copilot chats. I can start one, I can start summaries, but you'll start to see us do a lot more like in-place associations, maybe showing the conversation card, like, when you click this, it expands, jump to it. But yeah, just a whole bunch of like hierarchy in the UI now that we're trying to get better at, which is cool.
Yeah, I love the group summaries. They are way easier for me to actually navigate, because before it just was a long list of summaries, like every 20 minutes had a summary, and now you can actually like close them out, and then there's some tags. It just generated some new summaries on my end. Sorry, I'm going to steal the screen for a second.
I'd love to
click on one of the tags, for example.
Yeah, literally there's a bunch of new memories, or well, 2 memories that got formed since we started the stream, so in the last 30 minutes. And like you can click these live stream tags or anything like Q&A, and it will just jump to like all of that stuff. So I only have one for branding, but it's so cool. And there's like tags like community and things like that, so it's just way easier to navigate and find everything. Are the tags generated by the nano models? Is that what's happening?
They are. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. I love that. So if you haven't tried it, I saw Sophia is in the chat. We love Sophia. Sophia is amazing. Sophia is a Pieces ambassador. So definitely try the new workstream activity view in LTM 2.5 and let us know what you think. And if you find any weird bugs, do let us know about those bugs as well. Yep. And then Sean said the conversation UI looks nice now. So are you saying compared to LTM2 or the release prior to the LTM 2.5 release? Yeah, it was looking a little chaotic before, but now it's way easier to read your workstream activities. And also Sean did have a question earlier. Let me see. I think I'm going a little bit out of order here, but since we're on Sean's questions here, are there any new approaches you guys are excited about in terms of semantics processing? Second brain is the dream, but architecture-wise, I feel like I'm working with NLP tools that are 10 years old. Yeah, second brain is the dream. I'm thinking if somebody has a second brain that's going to come out, that's like literally the perfect second brain, it's going to be Pieces. I don't see anybody else doing it better than us. So, but I don't know. Do you have an answer to this, Tsavo? I see you kind of want to answer, or Antreas?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So, when I go ahead, Tsavo?
I was just gonna say Brian and Antreas seem like something's coming to top of mind for them. Yeah.
Right. So I would say that first, I think I agree with you. Like, if you think about it, the Transformer came out 2017. Now it's 2025. For all intents and purposes, even though there's slight modifications, it's the exact same architecture today. We just throw more data on it and we scale it better, and you get increasingly better stuff. All of the engineering happens at the how do you form the task, and how do you train faster rather than the architecture, even though there are small tweaks, right? So I do think that when you go to the route of thinking things in terms of biology and how do you do what the brain does with the amount of resources the brain has, you naturally start to converge into different ways of training and different architecture styles that are more efficient. So within Pieces, we are sort of working on a couple of projects that relate to how do you do memory with neural networks in a more efficient way, for example. So we are working on some of that. But overall, semantics processing, you have the same architecture, but every single sort of wiring diagram you get out of training it for a long time is quite different. Yeah. So, I would say that maybe one of the things that we might also help with is the fact that most models out there are decoder only, which means that there's no encoding part happening to the model explicitly during training. And so having our nano models are based on encoder-decoder architectures, which means that for every nano model we train, we also get free encoding embeddings, which allows us to have different perspectives on semantics as well. But going forward in general, I do hope more people use encoder decoder architectures rather than decoder only for a number of reasons, but including what you just said, I think.
Brian, any extra thoughts on some of that?
That's exactly what I was going to say, that like it feels like the technology is old for these semantics models, because it is. Like everyone has just been beelining for LLMs, like Antreas said, like decoder only, and kind of leaving behind like a lot of really useful tools in these different model architectures. And so, yeah, if any model trainers or runtime developers are listening, there's this whole fleet of other useful model architectures out there that like we are certainly going to continue investing in for a while. That LLMs seem like they can solve everything, but it's the classic kind of like problem of like throwing a jackhammer at something that like a simple hammer would solve. It's a bit more precise and a lot more memory efficient, or power efficient.
Yeah, I mean, achieving like 99% classification accuracy on intent in 22 milliseconds with a model that's 80 million parameters, as opposed to a model that's like 500 billion, right? Half a trillion. Like it's pretty insane. So I also think that the interesting thing is hardware is starting to catch up. Like the M series have been out for quite some time. I think Apple, was really smart about that. I think ARM architecture is really nice on the CPU, doing more on the CPU, getting some gains. We had a great kind of series of exchanges with the ARM team. And I think Intel is working on a whole bunch of stuff to make x64, very performant for this stuff. But also it comes down to like, how you architect this. And, we think about things like, memory reinforcement, memory decay, what happens during REM sleep, what are all these sensory inputs that your brain associates and uses to form memories in the first place? Was it a loud sound or was it a strong smell? Like these are all very important things that we model after, which to Antreas's point is how you converge on a system that can filter and reinforce and sort through the noise, if you will. Just it's digital and it's a lot more expansive.
Yeah, I'm really excited all about all the changes. And also, you mentioned smell being like related to memory. Apparently, this is just a random fun fact, but apparently if once you get like Alzheimer's or some kind of memory decay issue when you're old, apparently smell is like the first thing to go. So if you start not being able to smell things, go to your doctor.
Or you have COVID, right? Or
you have COVID, or you have COVID. So you might not have Alzheimer's, just COVID. So that would probably be better. But anyway, there is one thing that we didn't really talk about yet that I wanted to get to before we finish up the stream. But I think hopefully, I see a lot of people in the chat probably have heard about it already, but we did recently release Pieces MCP server, so you can use it in things like GitHub Copilot and Cursor, or like Antreas says, like Cursor OS. I guess that's like just the combination of Pieces and Cursor. But yeah, like you could literally just open up GitHub Copilot as per usual and reference your memories inside of that. But with this new LTM 2.5 update, there are some other things you can do with Pieces MCP server. So I was wondering, could you guys share about that?
Sure. I'll share my screen again. And
okay.
Oh, I guess I was sharing, but let's see here.
It disappeared.
Nice. So MCP, really easy to set up. Actually, we have a new support for Claude Desktop as well, with the Pieces CLI. But yeah, I mean, it's super easy to set up MCP. I'll just flash that real fast. But yeah, I mean, you just come in, you're like, okay, great. I just add this JSON, which is the URL for the MCP server to call. And now basically Cursor, GitHub Copilot, Goose, Claude Desktop, whatever, has access to the rest of your operating system. So like real-time context, this is a package Brian sent me. I can kind of go through it. I can look at some of the linking stuff. I can look at loading, so on and so forth. But all the meanwhile, this context is getting packed into Pieces. And I can go over to Cursor and I can say, let me close this. How might I use the Rust package I was just researching in this repo. Could I access it in Dart via FFI and Flutter Rust Bridge? Whoops, let me type GE. I'm looking to accelerate Onyx integration. So, say you're doing research for 10, 15 minutes on a topic, whatever else. You don't have to go and copy every page from that doc site, paste it into this chat here and say, like, I was just researching this, whatever else. It's going to go ahead and automatically create requests out to Pieces LTM. It's going to say, like, what package was I just researching? It'll break it down into some other stuff. Here's some related questions as well. It'll do follow-up to say, like, what specific details about this package, was I researching, what are its capabilities? How does it work? And it's going to go ahead and just like take all that and then use it in the context of your repository, right? So now you just said, hey, I connected Google Chrome and everything I was doing in the moment, everything I was doing historically to Cursor for Cursor to go ahead and eval this on its own. Now it's looking for a cargo toml file, which will only exist in this folder. And it'll go from there. So yeah, pretty cool to connect that. The other thing to note here is that agents can now form memories via MCP inside of Pieces. So I'll let this kind of come to a stop. I'll say stop here because it's going to start writing code for me. But I'll say new chat. I'll say based or how can you use Pieces to save important details about the changes or the Git changes that we made yesterday. If I can type, tell me about the tools you have available to you. So just kind of doing this for demonstration purposes, but let's go ahead and take a look. So this is the new tool that's available to MCP agents, but basically create a Pieces memory and then ask Pieces LTM. So, you can say document the changes, capture context, record the process, solutions you tried, final approach, challenges faced. It'll capture like file paths, Git references, PR links, all of the above. So I can say, from the changes I have locally, create a memory on what got done and save that to Pieces, please. I think I was mostly working on Markdown, but let's see how this thing goes. Checking out the Git changes. And Brian, Antreas, feel free to add any anecdote as we go through this.
Yeah, I personally like the way I use it, of course, with Cursor, but also I have a Cursor-based I don't know, organizer for what I'm doing, projects I'm scoping and chasing and stuff. And like, there's always a moment every couple of days where I'm like, yeah, I should have updated this ages ago, and I don't remember all the things I've done. So I just ask Pieces to find everything, and it does. And then it creates a list of all the things, and I like say, that one, not that one. Just goes in, updates everything. Everything is nice and neat, and we move on, which is nice. And as it gets better, I think it's going to make my life a lot more on track. Let's put it that way.
So, Antreas, to understand that a little bit, are you saying you use the current context in Cursor to search Pieces? Is that kind of, did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, so I have a number of, let's say, Markdown folders full of my projects and stuff that I've been working on. And then I just ask Cursor to ask Pieces about what I've been doing in the last day or two, so that we can update my entries on my projects and stuff. So it often finds new projects or new knowledge. It goes into the knowledge base section, for example, or idea section, stuff like that. And it goes and does that. And I'm also trying currently to have a bit of a calendar situation that gets updated, but that's like, it's not there yet. But I believe it's going to be able to help out with things. We'll see what happens.
Very cool. Well, let's see. So it is trying to form this memory right now, but it looks like it might be struggling with the summary parameter, which is hence why we need a nano model for that summarization stuff. We're using Claude 4 Sonnet, and the fact that it's struggling with this is pretty wild. I'm kind of shocked that it cannot summarize this stuff properly. But nevertheless, that is the difference between nano models and mega models. Is the mega models, they don't always understand the task, right? And they're just like you said, Antreas, a city, right, where really you need a specialist. But yeah, pretty cool. I mean, it did go through and find the files that changed, refactoring, remove old Tesseract inference stuff, transition to the vector search library because I was migrating a template, but pretty neat. I mean, the fact
Can we see that in pieces?
I don't know if it successfully made the, let me just try this out. From that summary, create a memory in pieces.
Henry said he uses Pieces MCP server in Rue code. Have you guys heard of that?
Have not.
Yeah. It's basically another piece of software similar to Cursor.
Oh.
But it's open source, I think, and there's basically it's a VS Code extension, so it doesn't have its own editor and stuff, and it's more open source.
That's still cool though. We maybe we should add it to our docs. How to use pieces in Rue code. How many people use that? Is that a popular thing, Henry?
I think so.
Maybe.
I think it's Rue, and then there's another one that I forgot the name of, but it's basically Rue, that one, and then Cursor. And I mean, Pieces maybe knows the answer. Let's ask it.
Well, nevertheless, I'll give it up on this, but we will check that out. I wonder if that's us or this large language model. Pretty interesting. But yeah, that's fresh off the press, like a week old. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other one is Klein, by the way. Just shout out.
Yeah. Henry mentioned Klein as well. You've used Pieces in Klein. Is that what you're saying? Have you guys tried that before?
I can't say I have.
Not yet. Well, let us know how it is, Henry. I don't think it's in our docs yet either, if you can use it in there. So we got to add it. We got to add Rue code and Klein, apparently. So, all right.
That's the beauty of MCP servers. You can use them anywhere.
I know. But I think we only have in there, I think we have Goose, codename Goose, and Cursor and GitHub Copilot. But I think it's good because a lot of people, even though maybe you guys are like, well, I know everything about MCP servers, I think a lot of people don't know about them or how to like actually use them inside of the tools. So having docs on that is still pretty important. But I do want to ask you guys, we have like 10 minutes, a little less than 10 minutes. I want to ask you guys all about Microsoft Build. Like what happened? So backstory, Brian and Tsavo were at Microsoft Build, or Brian's over here. I want to know the what happened. Did you guys talk to cool people? Did you see cool things? Did you I don't know.
Yeah, I can do a little summary of kind of what I felt like Microsoft was focusing on, Tsavo.
Yeah.
Where you need. Everything that they kept coming back to is this phrase called the open agentic web, which I think to me is just like providing people a fleet of AI tools and kind of like other softwares that back AI powered tools and allowing them to easily integrate those into their workflow, whether that is in the cloud on Azure, in your M365 projects or softwares, or locally, either directly on your OS or through native software. The way that it seems like they're doing this is one, like the actual connection layers are either you can manually program some of these native functionalities using their WinApp SDK APIs, or they have support for all of the new protocols. So MCP, agent to agent actions from Google, or Microsoft's new, they call it app actions, which are more of a manual setup, but we actually integrated this into Pieces. We can show it off, or I guess we need to get an MP machine, so we can't show it off now, but it essentially just allows you to interact directly between two applications manually on your Windows device. So those are kind of that's the interaction layer in terms of what they're actually bringing to the table for AI tools locally. Well, this is all wrapped in like the bubble of Windows AI Foundry.
Yep.
That's what they're calling all of this. That's cloud local AI tools and agents. What essentially they have are a whole bunch of kind of vision and language processing pre-baked tasks, like removing the background of this image, or what's that?
Summarize the image, stuff like that.
Exactly. So they have like kind of these pre-baked tasks that are rolled up. They'll also have the kind of raw like materials for those tasks, I'll say. So you can, they have these whole new on-device large language models that are directly on Windows. One of those is Phi Silica for the ARM NPUs. And then the other that is kind of cross Windows devices is the Foundry Local. You can kind of think of it like Llama CPP or OLlama, except it's a native tool that I'm sure at some point will be installed on all Windows devices. Yeah. Just allows you to download open source LLMs and use them very easily in your applications through a nice CLI or through the WinApp SDK. And so essentially they are giving everyone this massive tool set of AI features, whether it's models or vector databases or pre-baked tasks, to allow you to kind of start integrating them into your applications, and they're already speeding up their own applications as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it just as a trend of like, there's a race between, Apple and Microsoft right now to figure out who's building the first, like AI native OS, right? And again, like if you think about the volume of data that passes through the OS, that passes through all the apps you use, we just don't have enough data centers or GPUs or energy to process like that level of data. So we did see a large amount of emphasis on, APIs built into Windows to add AI features, which is funny, because that's exactly what we're focused on, right? Different types of APIs, but, similarly, enrichment, search, retrieval, all that stuff, with a particular product in mind. But it was nice to see, them investing in the Windows platform, and so, yeah, I mean, to Antreas's point earlier, it's going to be the operating systems, it's going to be wearables, it's going to be robotics. All of these systems are going to be ingesting levels of data and processing it in real time that are unprecedented, right? So the edge is becoming more and more important. I would say the other thing that we saw is the world of agents, right? So, they are trying to figure out how to enable these tools to take your productivity and kind of like 5x it. 10x might be a stretch, but it creates problems for humans, right? Keeping up with all the agents, checking in with them, correcting them when they go off track, So we are trying to figure out how to intersect that, at least from the perspective of context management and context sharing. But yeah.
Yeah. I do think that agents are the future. A lot of people predicted that when we did a 2025 prediction space. So I think that is a thing. I was listening to some of Microsoft build and kept hearing people talk about agents the whole time. And also I kept seeing pieces, logos everywhere. So why is that? Like, where did that come from? Why was pieces all over the place at Microsoft build? Before the stream, Brian told me that you guys even had a booth, even though you didn't have a booth, you kind of ended up having a booth. Like, what happened? How did that even happen?
Yeah, so I mean, I can't talk about everything for obvious reasons, but yeah, Microsoft is very interested in what we're doing. They're pretty excited about it. They we align philosophically with the approach, and we've been able to solve a lot of really hard problems with a fraction of the team, a fraction of the resources, and so on. So that's always interesting. But on our side, they came to us maybe like 8 weeks ago, and they were like, "Hey, we got these new APIs, we've got this new hardware, whatever else, can you guys accelerate your stack on top of it?" And sure enough, 8 weeks later, we did. We worked with 3 separate teams at Microsoft. There were not a lot of other folks, able to knock that out. We know some folks tapped out kind of like after the first couple of weeks, but we stuck it through. And yeah, I mean, Brian, I think they were genuinely pretty pumped about the work we got done.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's like we have the same thesis, like make these things available, these AI features available locally, run it on device. And that's kind of what we've been about our entire lifetime as a company. So it was a very natural partnership, I would say. And I think at these conferences, a lot of like the demos you get are it kind of like flashy, showy demos, but don't really aren't full integrations into a product. Like because like we're so aligned on these kind of like on device features, like we are actually able to like significantly like improve like pieces of our stack using these pieces of technology. So I think that's kind of rare for a conference to have like a very, very real use case that we're able to develop pretty quickly. So that felt pretty good. And I know that was recognized by a lot of people there.
No, that'll be merging into Main at some point here, and that'll be available for folks on the new version of Windows. And I can't, no comment. But so it's good stuff. But we do see a lot of NPU devices out there. We want to intersect with that market. A lot of Windows users on our platform. I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm really excited for all the future things we may or may not be doing with Microsoft. So I'm excited about that. Also, recently, if you guys want to check out this podcast, we did get a shout out in this podcast from Scott Hanselman. And I think this was filmed. I don't know if it was filmed or just recorded, but I think it was during Microsoft builds because you can hear all of the people walking in the background. And then he's like, oh, go find Tsavo. He's walking around somewhere. So I thought that was really cool. But anyway, we've been talking for an hour. We covered a lot of different things. I think we covered pretty much everything that I want to talk about, except for one thing. We have to know what is coming after LTM 2.5. Can you drop any secrets or not so secrets that are like predict the future here for us?
So in June, you'll see a lot of like cleanup and polish strokes, a lot of UX consolidation, big emphasis on search beyond just like Copilot chats. But it's our hope that users go to Pieces before they go to Google. It's like almost like search your local context space before you go and search the context space of the web. So you see a lot of that, and search kind of sets us up for suggestion, which would be kind of like early June. Our product roadmap on the UI side is about to explode because under the hood, the amount of associations and interconnectivity that represent the graph are all wired up now, right? So I think we probably layered in maybe 20 or 30 new additional associations between context points. So moving from this thing to that thing, like from an asset to a conversation to a summary to an event to a website, all of that is connected now, right? So we'll make some really nice UX. I think what you'll see is LTM 2.5 local by the end of June, with a release on the 13th, the week of the 13th. Bringing more of these components like locally, just for, again, cost, privacy, enterprise stuff, whatever. And then you'll have LTM 2.7, which is all of these models better, faster, hardware accelerated to support a lot of real-time search, a lot of real-time feed stuff. And then, July, August, all that stuff is, LTM 3 and a whole bunch of collaborative flywheels.
Very cool. I am very excited. Anything else you guys are excited about, or did Tsavo pretty much cover everything?
I would say maybe audio.
Audio? Is that what's going to happen?
Yeah. We are seriously exploring it as a way to fill in the gaps, right?
We don't know. We don't even know yet, but I'm very excited about the possibility of it.
Yeah. I am too. Wouldn't it be cool if right after this live stream, Pieces was like, hey, this is everything you talked about, and here are the timestamps. Because Pieces knows that I do, content creation stuff. So maybe it would be like, oh, maybe you can take this timestamp and make it into a video, like a short form video, or maybe you should take this quote and put it in a blog. That would be awesome. I'm excited for, I don't know when this is on the timeline, but I'm excited for when Pieces kind of prompts me to do stuff, and then it's like, by the way, you didn't do this and it was on your to-do 2 weeks ago. So that would be awesome.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff, but if you're watching a video, you're on a live stream, whatever else, it's like, at this timestamp, you pause the video, you looked at a link in the comment, you read that link, then you sent it to someone else, and then you resume the video, right? Or like same with demos or whatever else. Audio is a very interesting way to fill in the gaps, right?
I'm excited. We'll see if it happens. I see Michael's here saying, great release, terrific seeing Tsavo and Brian. Sorry I wasn't at Build this year. Catch up soon. Always a pleasure, Ellie. Nice to see you here. Glad you're here. Sean did say he's hoping for more Linux installers. So
we do have a whole new suite of installers, which would be awesome. You don't have to download Pieces OS from the website anymore, just the desktop app or a plugin.
Very cool.
Across the board, yes, we're working on that.
Yeah, I did hear from Sam that installers, or maybe it was Mark, or maybe it was Mac. I don't know. I get confused between all of them because they're talking about all this ML stuff. But somebody said that installers are going to be improved soon. So
significantly, yes.
We'll see.
Yes.
I'm excited about that. But anyway, Brian, any last minute words, or Antreas? I don't know if that was you.
I just want to say that there were 2 more small questions that we haven't answered, and I can answer in 30 seconds. So
okay, go for it. Speed run the questions.
I've been recommending pieces at work, and people ask me how this is not going to crash your computer. Do you have a minimum hardware requirements? My answer to that is, if your machine can run cursor, it can run pieces, basically. And the other one is, how good is LTM-2.5 identifying queries? Sometimes I forgot to turn off the LTM, and as something represented takes a lot of time to load the response. What I would say is that you should actually not be turning off LTM. We don't want you to be doing that. And the fact that it takes a long time is usually because it can fetch the memories very quickly, and then there's some time between LLMs thinking and whatever that takes place. We'll try to surface that in the UI, so you're more aware of what takes most time. And then you can, for example, change your Copilot LLM to be one that doesn't do as much thinking or more, depending on what you want to do. But I just wanted to double click on that because it's an issue we know that is there, and we have investigated, and we found that this is what's going on.
Yeah, I think back to that point of polish, Antreas, just small things like that, telling the user, hey, interpreting time, determining sources, thinking, showing the thinking from these big models. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to improve just on the UI side for sure.
Yeah, I heard some cool releases are going to happen early or mid next month as well. So I'm sure you'll see improvements across the board. I think even if we're coming out with a new feature, or the UI is changing, or the onboarding is changing, at least to me, it seems like with every release that something cool and visual is happening. There's also a lot going on under the hood to just improve pieces and performance in general. So don't worry, we're going to improve it. It's going to be better. And also, to kind of wrap up this live stream, I wanted to show you guys that Pieces has been making memories this whole time. So it knows that we are in this live stream right now. And then we talked about these things: LTM, LTM-2.5, nano models, MCP server. Oops, I clicked something. And yeah, it generated another memory here. I think it even got something. Oh, maybe it was in this one. I think it got something from Tsavo running the curl thing. Yeah, and then we've got all these kinds of memories. And then this literally just came out a couple minutes ago, and we've got another one. It even got the message that Pieces sent about the Scott Hanselman shout out. So
wow.
Anyway,
That's
Pieces
awesome.
Knows everything. Use Pieces as your second brain. I'm so happy that you guys jumped on this live stream, and thank you all for coming and sending in all your questions. They were really, really good questions, honestly, and we loved answering them. So stick around. Oh, also, if you're on LinkedIn right now, go look at our events, because there is an event, I think, next Wednesday at the same time as this one, and it's the first in a new series, which features a bunch of people from the Pieces team and Pieces community. And we're going to dive into their journeys into tech and what they do at Pieces, even if it's not an engineering person. It could be someone from SEO, which is what's happening next week. We're bringing on Hannah. It's going to be awesome. So yeah, anyways, see you guys later.
Cool. Thanks, Ellie. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Bye.